Okay, everyone, here we are for part 2 of the chapter on pharmacological and chemical ergogenic aids. We ended off talking about EPO and blood doping, and now we're just going to continue on with some of the perhaps lesser known ergogenic aids in this category. But here we go. There's one called ITTP, and this is that's a shorthand for myo-inositol. I'm going to try and say this right. Tripyrophosphate. Myo-inositol tripyrophosphate. You can see why it's easier to say ITTP. This is something naturally occurring in the body. It's a part of the red blood cell membrane. So it's a part of the cell membrane, basically, of a red blood cell. So again, it's something naturally in the body, but it's not a byproduct of a nutrient. What this is supposed to do, based off of the fact that it's part of the cell membrane of a red blood cell, it's going to be potentially beneficial to similar athletes that we talked about for EPO, and that's going to be endurance athletes. So if we can have more of this structural component of the red blood cell membrane, we can have more happy, healthy red blood cells that can transport more oxygen, and the muscles can work longer, harder, faster. So increases oxygen delivery to muscle, really. Because we're helping the structure of red blood cells, and because red blood cells transport oxygen, there you go. Because of these, it could increase endurance. So this is all about endurance. Does it work? Well, we don't really know yet. So we're going to leave this one to future research. This is becoming more common. But basically you can just lump it with EPO. It's a similar proposed mechanism of benefit, just a different way to get there. Again, you only have to know what's in red, right? All right, so our next one here is actually one you may have heard of a little bit, or will probably be a little bit easier to understand. This is one called sodium bicarbonate. Sodium bicarbonate is something that we have naturally in the body, but it is on the basic or alkaline side of the pH scale. So you know the pH scale. The pH scale is a measure of acidity through a measure of hydrogen ions, and the pH scale goes from 0 to 14. Acid is at the lower end. Base or alkaline is at the higher end. So sodium bicarbonate is a base or alkaline. And because of that, it can counter or balance out acid buildup. And you probably have, we talked about this a little bit. Lactic acid is something that builds up in athletes, particularly when they spend a long time in anaerobic metabolism. So the idea is if we have something basic, it can counter or buffer against this acid buildup. So the idea behind sodium bicarbonate is that it counters. If it is a problem that we have this acid building up, well, why don't we just bring in something that's basic to balance it out? No research shows that this works. None. And what we find is the body's own natural buffering systems work fine. They're the best. And a lot of times you can't reproduce what the body is already doing so well. The body buffers against pH really well. Sure, are there times when you can become acidotic because too much acid builds up? Well, of course. But there's nothing better than our body's own natural buffering system. As an endurance athlete myself, I do know some endurance athletes who have taken sodium bicarbonate. They're just basically taking baking soda. They're taking an alkaline or a basic solution. your body is the best. Baking soda is not going to make it any better. It is legal, but there's no research to show that it actually helps to buffer against acid buildup. Okay, we are getting towards the end here. This second video will be much shorter. So now we can get into phosphate. This is something that will not be on any quiz or exam. It's just another example here for your reference. Anything that contains phosphate, it's basically sodium phosphate, and this is the type of phosphoric acid. That's just a bunch of chemistry. But what it's proposed to have done, oh my goodness, this is a magic chemical, isn't it? Gives structure to bone. Component of the anaerobic energy system, so it can give you more energy. Oh, it's also a component of B vitamins and red blood cells, so it can give you more energy. It can help you have healthier red blood cells to transport more oxygen. Wow. This is really the magic chemical, isn't it? Mixed data. I think we might find out more about this, so right now we're going to leave it as a question mark. Again, it's not going to be on your test or quiz. Anything that can have a proposed mechanism of all these things, I believe it's unlikely that we're going to find scientific evidence that it does all these things. Maybe there's a niche. Maybe there's one application where for a certain athlete it can help. But just keep watching here. All right, insulin. You've probably heard of insulin, more for diabetics, who a lot of times when we hear of diabetics, we don't think of athletes. So an insulin is a hormone naturally produced by our body. So here we are again. We talked about testosterone. We talked about growth hormone. We talked about EPO, erythropoietin. And now we're talking about insulin. This is 4 hormones that we naturally produce. But maybe if we take more of it, it can have a benefit to performance. When insulin is taken, it is released when blood sugar is high and causes the body to store sugar. So the proposed mechanism of action is that it would, let me go back for one here. Right. The proposed mechanism of action is that by storing more sugar, it's going to make protein more available. That's really the basics here. By storing more sugar, the theory is, and I put that in quotations, theory, makes protein more available. So if I have more protein available, I can build more muscle. That's the basics of the proposed mechanism of action. Maybe a little tiny bit, but the evidence is not overwhelming. So I would give this a big fat no. Plus, I would caution people, if you are taking extra insulin, you're potentially altering our body's entire glucose homeostatic loop. And that has far-reaching effects. The body is set up so well to burn sugar when it needs to, and then to begin to burn fat when it can, store sugar, release sugar when needed. And the body releases insulin, glucagon when needed. So I would just caution people that you really could be opening Pandora's box here. All right. So again, this second video is going to be much quicker. To supplement or not to supplement? Here are my guidelines, my recommendations, Here are my recommendations, and these recommendations are based in the sports nutrition literature. So this is not just my opinion. The sports nutrition literature tells us it is best to get the most out of your body naturally. You know, I mentioned that steroids are most commonly taken by people, middle-aged men, right, who aren't elite athletes. It's easy. Don't we like easy things? Oh, if I can just take steroids, I can build muscle without having to look at what I'm eating and try and eat healthy, to not have to worry about really working out as hard. So, of course, it's a natural inclination to want to get things easier. But I'm encouraging you, folks, our body can be an incredible machine. So really, I encourage athletes, get the most out of your body naturally. Train well with sound principles. Eat well, that's the harder part, in my opinion. Have an ideal body composition, all these things. Only then would I consider a supplement if needed. And look at that key word, supplement. I am not talking about an ergogenic aid at all, folks. I'm talking about a supplement. If, through optimizing your training and diet, if you cannot get in enough of what you need. For example, I'm not afraid to say it. I'm a woman of a certain age, and as women get older, and I'm an athlete, as women get older and we approach menopause, women start to see a drastic change in their estrogen and progesterone levels. Men don't have to worry about this, but with women approaching menopause, basically our hormones start to go haywire, and it affects our metabolism of carbohydrates and protein and fat. It is a proven scientific fact. Women approaching menopause, as women get older, we need more protein. I'm someone who doesn't eat meat, so it's harder for me to get enough protein anyway. So this would be a consideration for a supplement. Maybe I would need to take a protein supplement because I'm not able to reach my needs. Not as an ergogenic aid, just to bring in enough for my needs and then train better. And I would also just caution you on the side effects, right? Potential side effects that we don't even know yet. I'm not saying that there's never, we'll talk next chapter about whey protein, about creatine. Even from our lecture today, caffeine, well, that's pretty safe, right? So I'm not saying you can't look at some of these, but I'm really encouraging you to get the most out of your body naturally. Also, we cannot forget the manufacturing of supplements and ergogenic aids are not well regulated at all. So you don't really know what you're taking. Would you honestly take something from someone who looks like this? This is from the movie Fargo. William H. Macy as the character killed someone, then lied about it, and he was a used car salesman, as this picture shows. So these very well may be the people producing these supplements. So I wouldn't bet on them. All right, good job, folks. We'll see you next time.